guys, Sharp and Tasty here. Outside just for a little bit of a change. It was nice outside, I decided to come outside. Doing a video that has absolutely nothing to do with being outside, but today I want to talk about salt. Now, salt is something you cooked with, it's something you've had all your life, and there's a lot more to salt than people ever think about. So, to begin with, there are, in general, 4 different kinds of salts. Now what you're going to have is what you're most familiar with, that being table salt. And then this is characterized just by kind of, sometimes it has iodine in it, but that won't change the flavor, it's just a nutrient that humans need, so just so you know. But it's those tiny little small cubes, and I'll get into more about the shape and how the shape affects different kinds of foods later. The next kind of salt, a little more weird, is kosher salt. Highly suggested, by the way. This is rabbinically supervised. What that means is that there's rabbis supervising it, so you get a little bit higher quality than just standard table salt. Sorry, I'm looking into the sun a little bit. But this is kind of larger, more random shapes. Generally just kind of flat flakes. They're vary in size. The next kind of less weird kind of salt is malt vinegar salt. Now this is just an example of different kinds of flavored salts that there are out there. You can buy hundreds of different colors, flavors. Obviously, within the category of flavored salts, there's an infinite number of different kinds of salts. But this is the example that I have today. A little bit more expensive than either of those two. And this particular salt is kind of a fine powder. Going to be using this in a beef marinade later on. Final kind of salt that I have today is something I actually just found out in my pantry the other day. I was thinking about making this video and I was looking around for different kinds of salts. I found this. This salt is called fleur de sel. Now this is sea salt. This is the 4th kind of thing, is sea salts. What's special about fleur de sel I'll get into later, but this is like kind of the highest grade of salt that you can buy. And it's ridiculously expensive. I honestly don't suggest buying it unless you just want to say you have it. I didn't even know I had this kind of cool. Apparently it was a gift from my aunt and uncle, but that's beside the point. So first I'm going to get into table salt. So the table salt is basically how they get table salt is they'll have huge underground mines full of this big salt, and they'll flow water through it. What that'll do is it'll push water up on the other side that's full of salt, let that evaporate, get that out. That's how you get your tiny little cubes that you can fit on your salt shaker. Standard salt uses for it, what I would say mainly is put on your table. Obviously table salt, put it on your table. Cooking wise, the only thing that I would use table salt for is baking, because baking, it allows you, the finer grains will spread out more thoroughly in your different batters, and that'll give a more even texture and flavor, and consistency is incredibly important in the cooking world. So other than that, like if you're gonna salt pasta water, or you're gonna do anything in suspension is what it's called. Anytime you put salt in a different kind of liquid, it's called putting it in suspension, because what that means is that you're just so the salt breaks up into Na and Cl. It's ions if you're into chemistry. That's all I remember from chemistry, honestly. So basically, what that means is that any kind of salt you get is going to be the same when it's in suspension. But you can use this, it will dissolve faster if you put it in pasta water, so that's the thought. Other than that, put it on your table, use it in baking, there you go. Now, kosher salt, a little bit different. I wouldn't put this on your table, you can, obviously. It'd be nice, I mean, it'd be cool to put on your table, especially if you're obviously a Jewish family and you have to. But kosher salt is incredible for any kind of cooking. Now, especially meats. Now, the reason I say it is kosher salt, it is varied in size, so it's easier to control. With a little tiny grains of table salt, you're seasoning whatever you're seasoning. Say we're making steaks. You're seasoning your steaks, and you stop kind of like, dabbing it, and they're still falling because you can't grab something that small. These, I mean, they're not huge flakes. I don't even know if I can see. My camera's horrible at close up. But they're just kind of bigger, so obviously, I mean, if you can see those, as soon as I stop, like rubbing my fingers together, the flakes stop falling. What that means is you can control how much salt you're putting out on your food, which is incredibly important. Again, helps you have good consistency in your food. Now, another great thing that this does is since it's a larger pieces, you sprinkle this across meat, and it'll be, or any kind of food really, sorry. It'll be more of a time lapse sort of, I don't know how to say this, but it'll spread out the addition of salt to the food over time. Now what that means is that your food, I don't know, just makes it taste better honestly, but it'll, instead of just zapping it with salt and drying out that one piece maybe, or bringing all that moisture to the top there, it'll slowly bring the moisture out, because what salt does not dry out your food. I should probably talk about salt in its purpose at the beginning of the video, but I'll save it to the end, just because I don't feel like interrupting my train of thought, even though I just did. But what this will do is, it's not going to dry out your food as fast or as differently. It'll slowly bring the juices to the top, and that's really great, especially on meats, any kind of food. That time release and that control, really, between that and the fact that I just think you get a better flavor from using kosher salt, those things, I'd say, make this incredibly useful. Go out, buy some, it's cheap. I think I got this huge ass box for like $3, $3.06 if I remember correctly. And obviously it lasts you forever. I've dumped a whole bunch of this in a tin that I have, and it's fantastic. I love it so far. And so yeah, go pick some of this up. I highly suggest it. Helps you get more refined flavors in your food. Again, that time lapse sort of, addition of salt to your food. All right, next kind of salt, that flavored salt, my malt vinegar salt. This is really more specialized stuff. Again, marinades, like for this, malt vinegar salt, and any other kind of flavored salt. It's the same thing as your table salt with regards to when you should use it, except that when you should use it here is not on your table. I mean, honestly, a recipe will really call for it, or you'll think, oh hey, I think that making my orange chicken with orange flavored salt, and I don't know if they make orange flavored salt, but if they do, maybe that would taste good. That's when you'd use like a flavored kind of salt. Or like the recipe I was looking for in the marinade, it calls for malt vinegar salt. So I went out and I got some of this. This is, flavored salts are going to be much more expensive, but still pretty cheap. I mean, this was $7.95 for this bottle, and this will last a long time. So if you think of how many times you're actually going to use that and how much you have here, it's going to last a while. And try it out. Maybe go get some different flavors salt if you really feel like it. Not necessary, obviously, unless the recipe calls for it, at which point, try it out and go for it. So obviously, the last little piece of this fleur de sel salt. So this is sea salt, which means that they use sea water. Obviously, it's cleaned, filtered, and then processed, but the only thing that makes sea salt different from table salt is its size, and that's a lot along the lines of kosher salt. So if you wanted to give a good comparison, this is like, I don't know, big random chunks of table salt. So it looks a bit different. It has the same kind of properties as kosher salt, but the look, sort of table salt. And I mean, that'll give you various different flavors and textures. Honestly, if you were going to go buy some sea salt, go buy some kosher salt. That's my suggestion. But honestly, this fleur de sel salt, what's special about this is how they make it. So they have these huge salt ponds, and as the water evaporates and stuff, there's a little tiny layer of salt that gets formed on the top of this pond. And what they'll do, they'll go and skim that tiny little layer of salt off, dry it out, give it to you, new fleur de sel salt. This stuff, this particular brand of sea salt, obviously you can buy sea salt for cheaper, but this is like incredibly expensive. I mean, the size of this would probably be around $40. This is made in France. I mean, honestly, if you have the kind of money and you really believe that it'll make a better flavor, go try it out. I mean, honestly, maybe it's a special occasion sort of deal, but I don't see a true reason for this kind of salt, other than that it's kind of cool. But honestly, go get some kosher salt instead. But that's not much else to talk about with salt, apart from the purpose. So the real purpose of salt is not to make foods taste like salt. What salt does is, as a human, we need salt in our bodies, and that's why salty things taste good, because we generally don't get enough sodium in our diets. But what salt does is it enhances all the flavors around it. If you're seasoning to the point where the thing tastes like salt, that's not doing it right. But if your food is bland, add salt and it'll make it less bland. It'll bring out all the different flavors. It brings them all out on an even plane generally, so just kind of like, it's like you have a flower bud, and that's your unseasoned food, your unseasoned, unsalted, unpeppered, on everything food. that's the bud of, say, like a rose, and then you salt it and stuff, and it pops open. All the flavors come out, and it just makes it taste a lot better. And when you put salt on something, it's not going to dry it out. What it's going to do, say you put a bunch of salt on the top of a piece of steak. What it's going to do to that steak is it's going to bring the juices up to the top. And that's interesting for a couple different purposes. One, when you grill or sear that steak, it's going to let the juicy brown exterior just I don't really explain it, but it'll crisp up those juices and it'll just make that, when you sear it, say, that brown kind of more cooked exterior is going to be really tasty, really delicious. And it also means that the juices are all packed inside the middle of the meat. Well, this is bringing them out, so it's kind of expanding the juices, making the juices more throughout the steak or piece of meat, and it's going to make it taste a lot better, and also bring out the flavors of everything. But overall, the kind of salt you can use table salt, kosher salt, sea salt. Obviously, the flavored salts are kind of a different category. Well, they are a different category, but different kind of time you'd use them. But all three of those you can use interchangeably. They're not going to have a huge effect on your food, but honestly, you do notice it. You will notice it. And that's why I suggest go get some kosher salt. If you feel like it, go get some sea salt. Honestly, it's not necessary at all, but maybe it'll make it taste better. Maybe you like it more. Yeah, I mean, overall, go out, try different kinds of salt. I hope this video is interesting. So there's so much more to salt than I've even talked about here, but don't forget to season your food.